Florence Kelley once said, "To live means to buy, and to buy means to live, and to have power means to have responsibility." By this she meant that the working conditions we accept for our fellow citizens should be reflected upon our own purchases. We as consumers of these in-demand products should demand safe working conditions, reliable and stable hours, and make livable wages for the hard, almost backbreaking work that our treasured laborers do. She was a renowned political and social reformer who advocated for mandatory minimum wage, 8-hour-day workdays, and the abolishment of sweatshops. Florence was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on September 12, 1859, to William D. Kelley and to Caroline Bartman Basil. William D. Kelley was a longtime member of the U.S. House of Representatives. She had 2 brothers and 5 sisters, all whom died during their childhoods. She was greatly influenced by her father. She was quoted as saying, "I owe him everything that I've ever been able to learn how to do." Her great aunt, Sarah Pugh, also made an everlasting impression on her when she chose not to use cotton or sugar because of its connection to slavery. Kelley was married in 1884 but divorced soon after due to the domestic abuse suffered from her husband. She gained full custody of her 3 children and always preferred to be called Miss Kelley. Florence had a passion for learning. During her childhood, she spent many hours in her father's library. Although this was due to her susceptibility to infections, she nurtured her fondness of learning through reading of his many books. In 1882, she attended Cornell University and graduated. She was a Phi Beta Kappa member, and her thesis was on the disadvantaged children, which was influenced greatly by her father's teachings. Kelley was a member of the Intercollegiate Socialist Party Society. This was a socialist student organization that mainly acted as the unofficial wing for the Socialist Party of the United States. She was a champion of women's suffrage and predominantly spoke about African American civil rights, which was considered almost taboo for her during her time. Florence became a founding member of the NAACP, in which she belonged to the Committees of Nominations Board, the Budget Board, the Federal Aid to Education Board, the Anti-Lynching Board, and the Inequality Expenditure of School Funds Board. In 1913, she studied federal patterns of distribution of funds for education. She noticed a lot of inequitable distributions for white schools as opposed to black schools. She launched her own bill to create the Sterling Discrimination Bill, which was an attack against the Sterling-Towner Bill. The Sterling-Towner Bill was proposed federal sanction of $2.98 per capita for teachers of colored children and $10.32 per capita for children of white schools in 15 schools in the South and Washington, D.C. They thought that this bill would perpetuate the continual discrimination and neglect of public schools for black people. Her bill, which was contentiously argued between the members of the NAACP, was finally passed, and it called for equal distribution to schools to be handled by the states based upon population. From 1899 through 1926, Florence Kelley founded and acted as General Secretary of the National Consumers League, which was a strongly anti-sweatshop. She used her direction to raise public awareness and pass state legislation to protect workers, primarily for women and children. The Consumers League established a code of standards that served to raise wages, shorten hours, and required a minimum number of sanitary facilities. Kelley's NCL sponsored a consumer's white label on clothing that restricted garment production with child labor and working conditions against state law. She led the National Consumers Committee League until her death in 1932. Protesting, advocacy, and the need for social justice and welfare reform ran deep within the souls of Florence and her father. Her father fought to make it illegal for children to work under the age of 14 and to limit hours for children under the age of 16. In 1893, Kelley had an integral part in establishing and passing the first labor laws, limiting work to 8 hours a day for women and prohibiting children under the age of 14 from working so they could pursue an education. This was the start of the progressive era in social reform. Florence Kelley was a remarkable woman, and she also had many other accomplishments. Kelley also lived in the Hull House from 1891 to 1899 in Chicago. The Hull House, made famous by another exemplary policy advocate, Jane Addams, provided housing for the poor along with social welfare amenities, educational training, and outlets for artistic expression. Florence Kelley will certainly always be remembered and left a wonderful legacy behind. She died in the Germantown section of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on February 17, 1932. Florence Kelley will always be remembered for her firmness and fierce energy. One of her most famous speeches, given on July 22, 1905 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where she spoke out against child labor and for women's suffrage. She was quoted as saying, "What can we do to free our consciousness? There is one line of action by which we can do much. We can enlist the working men on behalf of all of our enfranchisements, just in proportion as we strive with them to free the children. No labor organization in this country ever fails to respond to an appeal for the help in freeing the children. For the sake of the children, for the republic in which these children will vote after we are dead, and for the sake of our cause, we should enlist the working men voters with us in this task of freeing the children from this toil." Florence Kelley was the true definition of a feminist. She stood for equal rights for all. With a brilliant mind, financial stability, and the tenacity and courage to speak not only up, but out in the face of blatant sexism, discrimination, and oppression. She was not only an ally for our workers' rights, but she was a champion for all, and will always forever have a profound and everlasting impact on our society.